Thank you. So I have a little cold, so I'm going to try to get through this and also blow your mind and not cough all over everyone. So my name is Prentiss Haney. I am a community organizer, a campaigner, and an artist, and also my day job is running a youth power organization. And last year, I got in my head a wicked question about what if we actually was curious about what people actually do. So to the audience, raise your hand if you know anyone who is creating something, rather a makeup tutorial or a critique of a video or like summaries on the internet. Like they're doing some sort of media thing online, like a friend, not a professional, but just a friend, someone that you probably went to school with, and now they have a YouTube channel. Yeah, me too. Most of my friends do that. So when I got interested about what people were doing and someone who's leading a power organization that's trying to transform politics, I'm like, why are all those people not in my work? Why are there not the ones that are engaging in this process? So when we got invited to this conversation, the question was why and how are platforms in this converged media empowering storytelling and community activism? I got really curious about that because, as Jeff Chang would say, it's politics are where some people are some of the time, but culture are where people are all the time. When I started thinking about this question, what I arrived at is that in the civic space, platforms are a tool for decentralized social and political engagement, and at its best is the formation of narrative. But behind those platforms, all those people you raise hands are artists and creators who are leveraging these platforms to create a civic life. So in the Midwest Culture Lab, we built this thing because we believe that centering artists as a political strategy is a strategy that's been deeply underappreciated and mostly untested. So, as I said, politics is where some people are some of the time, and culture is where most people are all the time. So the Midwest Culture Lab is a celebration of Midwest culture designed as a hybrid social venture and a political strategy aimed to politically activate young people who create culture in the Midwest. Through organizing, producing content-ready content, promoting a network of brilliant Black and brown artists, we're building a marketplace that activates emerging Black and brown artists who are telling stories that are replacing old and dangerous narratives, that are pushing ourselves outside of politics, but are now, with these narratives, are changing the imagination. So this lab is building the narratives and the cultural power that we need in the Midwest. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So what do we test? Why did we build this thing? I run a youth power organization, which means that we're trying to transform politics in Ohio. So we didn't want to build a cultural program just for the sake of having better content in our state. We wanted to build a cultural program to understand what would happen if you brought artists and creatives and culture into a political campaign, and how could that impact youth vote turnout in a state? What did we test? We built a cultural program of Black and brown artists, and 25 Black and brown artists, where we funded about $73,000 towards Black and brown artists to create content that was centered around our story platform, which was a methodology about how you tell stories in the Midwest. Through our cultural audit, we realized that what was happening in the Midwest was there was stories of isolation. People believing that when they wake up in the morning and they look out at the news sources, that they are being bombarded with messages and stories that tell them that they're alone, that they don't have a place in politics, they don't have a place in this world. And at the same time, young people, Black and brown folks, are being resilient and creating things that tell them that they're supposed to be here. So when we went out and tested this, we learned that these artists are modeling the engagement we want to see in politics. So in Ohio, we had a sentencing reform campaign, issue 1, where we were trying to reclassify nonviolent drug offenses from misdemeanors, 4 or 5 to misdemeanors, and to retroactively change those convictions. And while also doing that, all the money that would be saved from the $2 billion prison industry in Ohio would go into mental health, trauma-informed, and healthcare centers in our state. So When we went out and we took these artists and we told them the story about what we were trying to do politically, we asked them to create content that would tell this story in Ohio through a story platform, telling stories about co-creation, authentic engagement in the world that we need. So, when we went out and did that, as a youth power organization, we came up against a lot of opposition. So these guys look like pretty inspiring storytellers, right? So what we saw happen is that because we were the little dogs in the state that were trying to tell a different story about how our state should look, the campaign decided to do what they do, which is message testing of Ohio and figure out what is the message that would actually allow us to win the campaign. So surprise, surprise, what came back was that we need to put on stories about these white men saving and protecting our state. You feel good? Does that sound like a story you want to hear? So when they went out and tested this message, because they have not ever engaged with people who were directly impacted by these issues, who were artists and actually knew how to tell stories that transform people, but not stories that tried to get people to do one thing one time, $13 million went into these messengers. The stories that were told through this message was about how do we protect white women from a system of incarceration by moving money to white people who are impacted by the opioid crisis in our state. Surprisingly, this message lost, and we lost the ballot. But that's not the only story that happened, because while they were pushing this message on TV and on Facebook ads and telling folks that if we get white women, conservative white women, to do one thing different one time, that we can change our state, we told a different story. We decided that if young folks were able to tell the story about the state to the demographic of 18 to 29-year-olds, paired with a large-scale civic engagement program where we touched over 300,000 young folks in the state through our program, that we would see an impact of youth vote turnout in our state. So through our engagement on issue 1, through funding these artists in the creation and distribution through Instagram, Facebook, and also site-based experiences with art crawls and convenings, we were able to see youth vote turnout in 2014, which was 11.6%, to increase to 33% in Ohio this year, in 2018. And I can say that this is a tribute to our work because our organization was the only one working with young people in the state. So I would say that because we were able to focus on the storytelling of the folks who were actually modeling the engagement in Ohio, what they were able to do was not only just create better messages than the old shares that we saw in the previous ones, they created stories that they actually wanted to engage in. They sent these videos and photos. These photos are actually from one of the artists we funded. They were able to send those to their friends and family and ask them to engage in our politics. They were able to organically reach the folks that any paid digital advertisement we would have put out would have been flooded by the political environment we were in 2018. So we created our own center of gravity by actually trusting artists and creatives. So I want to show you an example, hopefully this video will play, about what it meant for this to happen. After we funded those artists, we brought them together for a convening for 2.5 days in Columbus, Ohio, where we sat down those artists and we had a conversation about what would it mean for our state to actually have money towards healing and trauma and non-incarceration. It was a room very similar like this where artists sat down and they got to tell their stories, and there was not an extraction of those stories. People sat in them. People held space for those stories to be told. They felt the critical connections of being artists and creatives in a community that looked just like each other across Ohio. And through that conversation, we were able to unearth the highest performing political ad in that campaign, because the stories that we heard there, and then our creative director, Amber J. Phillips, who created a script, that day, we shot a political ad that performed 2 times better than any of the TV ads that went up. So I'm gonna show you the ad and I'll talk a little bit about what we're learning and where we're going.
Close your eyes and picture this. You, a powerful being, healed, whole, loved, and worthy. You can create exactly what you need in an impossible world. You are a creator. The truth is, life is hard. We all struggle. So imagine a world where we aren't locked up in cages and thrown away for our mistakes. Instead, we are held with deep compassion and love. Imagine a world where we treat trauma with care and kindness, where rehab and treatment is celebrated because, my God, we've got one of our own back, where you are held in your humanity, even with your imperfections. Now, open your eyes. If we can say it and see it, we know that it is possible. All we have to do is say yes.
The content we create must be real. It has to be engaging the communities that we want to model this. So while we went in with a question about how do we increase voter turnout for young people in Ohio, what we actually learned is that what is happening in the Midwest is that we are missing an amazing opportunity to use artists as a political strategy to transform our states in the Midwest. So where are we going? The Midwest has an issue called white supremacy. And the country does too. But the issue is that it has power and legitimacy in our state because we have not uplift messages and stories from people who are actually breaking through and trying to transform that state. So because it has power and legitimacy in there, our politics has created a space where they can build a political vehicle to use us as pawns to create a nation that we are not moving towards. So because we have built power with young Black and brown creatives, we saw that they're engaging in the stories and the transformative culture that actually will delegitimize white supremacy in our state. So what's more important than voter turnout is that we actually have to engage in young Black and brown artists who are going to shift public opinion, build participatory political culture, and transform our republic, because in the short term, if we shift public opinion, we could create access to policies that are not possible right now until in the end, the artists that we engage with will create the political culture that will engage thousands and millions of young people that will transform our republic. We're creating a marketplace for artists and the news stories for that status quo. If we are truly about the work of delegitimizing white supremacy, we have to go find the people who are modeling that. All those folks in the Midwest are Black and brown artists. If we give them the tools to tell the stories, they will, for one, create policy opportunities that we never saw possible, but then they'll create content and stories that will live beyond us and protect and sustain the communities that we need. Thank you.